Welcome to Grounded Wellness, your go-to podcast for simplified and trusted information on how to live a more non-toxic and holistic life. We're your hosts. I'm Bethany McDaniel, founder of Primally Pure, biohacking enthusiast and mom of 3.
And I'm Courtney O'Connor, holistic esthetician with over 15 years experience in the healing power of touch and holistic skincare rituals.
Growing older doesn't have to be miserable and full of symptoms of declining health. If you're someone who wants to feel amazing and look great as you age, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon's unique approach to health and wellness is going to be right up your alley. In today's episode, Dr. Lyon is going to explain muscle-centric medicine, and I love her no-nonsense approach. Your muscle health is directly affecting your overall health for better or for worse. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know that you will too. Let's dig in. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, thank you so much for coming out here and for joining us today on Grounded Wellness. I am so excited to dig into this conversation with you.
First of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Secondly, I have never been on a podcast set that is on the ground and there are chickens and pigs and trees on set. I mean, this
all the animals.
It's extraordinary. This is so beautiful.
We just had a pig run through here.
I mean, I don't know if I could ever podcast again.
This will be
amazing.
It.
This is it.
Let this be the last one.
This is it. And I'm so happy that it's here with you.
Oh,
it's
and
really
our
nice
kids
to
are
see
running
you.
around playing. So yeah,
Yes.
It's been fun.
So beautiful.
I'm sure they're having a great time. So you really were the first person that I have seen really pioneer the movement of muscle-centric medicine and just talk about the importance of muscle for health and longevity and protein to the extent that you're doing that and to the extent of like the masses that you are reaching with that conversation. And I think now it is starting to catch on, but thinking back, like I feel like it was really you who spearheaded this whole conversation. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this and how you came to discover the importance of muscle when it comes to health and longevity.
First of all, thank you so much because it's the most underappreciated conversation.
It is.
Especially in wellness. Mm-hmm. There is a bit of a division between fitness and then the wellness community. Skeletal muscle is everything. And before I tell you exactly what it does, let me tell you a little bit about the story of how this all happened.
Let's hear it.
I did my undergraduate in nutritional sciences. I was very active, and you know when you land in the presence of someone that changes your life in the way that you think. We've all had that experience where we're either listening to our mentor or we're seeing something and it just evolves our thinking in an instant. I was at the University of Illinois and I was in nutrition class, and here comes Dr. Donald Layman, my mentor now of over 20 years. And he is one of the world leading experts in protein metabolism. Protein and muscle. Here I am in the cornfields of Illinois, recognizing that I'm learning from one of the best in the world. This changed everything for me. And then I dedicated my life to nutrition and muscle. Fast forward to medical school. And I have to say I was a bit of a reluctant doctor. The reason I went to medical school is because I felt an obligation to be able to do more than what I was able to do by just studying nutrition alone. And the reason I'm fast forwarding this is because this is like a 17-year education process and nobody has time for that. And by the way, I also don't recommend that for anybody. After 2 years of psychiatry, 3 years of family medicine, I went back. I went back to do a fellowship. I did a fellowship in geriatrics and nutritional sciences. You're probably thinking, why do you want to go back and do geriatrics? You were thinking that, weren't you? Mm-hmm. Anybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, geriatrics wasn't my first choice, I have to be honest. And for someone who's listening or watching, geriatrics is the study of people 65 and older. And being very interested in fitness and muscle and protein, the deal was in order for me to do nutritional science training, I had to choose a specialty to go back to get funding. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Because while I was studying nutritional sciences at WashU in St. Louis, I had to do a graduate project. And that project was looking at body composition and brain function. I imaged this one participant's brain. She was in her mid-50s, a mom of 3. She had always struggled with the same 20 to 30 pounds, yo-yo dieting, doing what everybody told her to do. And her brain looked like the beginning of an Alzheimer's brain.
Wow.
And I felt responsible. I was like, she was eating less, exercising more, and doing what we were telling her as a society to do, and she couldn't get it right. And it's not her fault. It's impossible to get through the noise. And I had this flash of insight, and I'm sure you've had moments of that that's just changed the trajectory of Primally Pure or the product or the information. And this moment of insight was that we'd been focusing on the wrong tissue. She didn't have an obesity problem. What she really had was a muscle problem. And the challenges that she had been faced with, from diabetes, insulin resistance, elevated triglycerides, all of the things that we put the fault on adipose tissue, it was her skeletal muscle health that was everything.
You're focusing on the wrong organ.
It was the wrong organ. It was the wrong organ system. We've been trying to fix an obesity epidemic for the last 50 years by focusing on the wrong thing. It was at that moment that muscle-centric medicine was born, that the concept that I created in fellowship was born.
Wow. And so the idea of muscle being an organ was something that was unfamiliar to me until I heard you start talking about it. I don't think we often think of muscle as an organ, and you talk about how muscle is actually the largest organ, which most people will say that skin is the largest organ, but
that's so passé.
Tell us a little bit about like the importance of having muscle and what its function is, because I think most people think it's just a vanity thing. It's a metric, you know, of people that want to look good, but there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, you know, skeletal muscle is the largest organ system in the body.
What about if you don't have much muscle? Is it still, do you still have more muscle than your skin?
What a great question. Yes.
Okay.
By sheer mass. I mean, I'm saying that blanketly, but for the majority of people, it's roughly 40% of your body weight.
Wow.
And for some people,
huge.
it's more. Yes. So could you imagine if 40% of your body weight is this organ system, and if it's unhealthy, then you are walking around with low levels of chronic inflammation just based on the health of this tissue.
So it's not only the amount, it's the health of the
That's
tissue
everything.
itself.
So if people care about how they're going to age, if they don't want to get heart disease, if they don't want to get Alzheimer's, there are all these diseases and things that we want to protect and prevent, then we have to take care of skeletal muscle. And I'm going to explain why. Skeletal muscle, you'd mentioned, is very important for strength, mobility, looking good naked, all of the things that we care about, which if people say they don't care about it, you do.
They're lying.
They're lying. You guys are totally lying. But the other aspect of skeletal muscle is it's our metabolic sink. We have this great smoothie, which I'm sure is lower in carbs.
Whey protein smoothie that I made for us this morning.
Skeletal muscle is the site for glucose disposal. The carbohydrates that we eat, the nutrients that we ingest, it has to go somewhere.
It's so fascinating because when we eat carbs, right, the glucose circulates in our bloodstream, causes inflammation, but the more muscle we have, the muscle can actually utilize that glucose and take it out of circulation. Yes. Which is so cool.
And everybody is talking about insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, the pancreas produces insulin. Insulin moves glucose out of the bloodstream into cells. But what's so amazing is exercising skeletal muscle does not require insulin. That means that if you have carbohydrates and then you're active, your body doesn't depend on insulin.
Yeah.
The body is using its own mechanism to be able to be under metabolic control. And skeletal muscle, as the metabolic sink, it utilizes glucose, which is important. Also, at rest, it burns fatty acids. We have 40 million people on statins. A better choice would be to have healthy skeletal muscle.
And statins are what are prescribed for cholesterol.
Exactly.
High blood? No, just
Cholesterol, exactly.
Okay.
Statins are medications. There are multiple different kinds, whether it's fat soluble or water soluble, but these statins are almost given out like water, right?
Yes.
It's like candy. Here's your
Yeah.
chiclets, side of statin and whatever else that you're having,
So
and cereal.
even when we're not using the muscle, it's there and it's working and it's benefiting us, right?
Now you're bringing up something that's really important. Sedentary muscle is not healthy muscle.
Okay.
There is no such thing.
It's just over the course of a day. So,
yes.
you know, if we're using it regularly, but maybe not right in this moment,
Yeah.
but it's still active, is that
And
correct?
actually, it burns fatty acids at rest,
Which is great.
which is wonderful. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Skeletal muscle also does a number of really interesting things. When you exercise and contract skeletal muscle, it releases myokines. And myokines are little hormones that go throughout the body that interface with your brain and your bone and your immune system. Skeletal muscle creates this inter-organ crosstalk. It's this way that it can lower inflammation based on the intensity and duration of your training.
Wow.
And that becomes incredible because I think at the end of the day, what do we all want? We all want to live in a body that's healthy, that we feel good in, so we can spend time with our family, so that we can do good by humanity, do things that we love. And if we are feeling unhealthy and not being the best version of ourselves, then we struggle.
And the people around us struggle.
Yeah, and it's also, when you think about the pillars of health, skeletal muscle has to be at the foundation. It's not just our physical foundation, but it's our foundation for metabolism. It's our foundation for how we can live in the world. You have to be strong. It'll make pregnancy better. The fitter you are, the easier your pregnancy should be. The fitter you are, the better your survivability against disease. You know, it's very unusual to be able to say this one organ system, the healthier it is, the greater your ability to survive nearly anything that you come in contact with.
Across the board.
That's very unusual to be able to say.
The benefits seem to be endless, like immune function,
Yeah.
lowers inflammation. Talk about, like, as we age, what does muscle do for aging people as they're, you know, getting up there in years?
Well, what's so fascinating is skeletal muscle, I didn't tell you, is a nutrient sensing organ. It has the ability to sense the quality of our diet. And one of the reasons why I think that it has maintained this ability is that, for example, skeletal muscle is very sensitive to dietary protein. And your original question was, well, what happens as people get up there and as they age? The ability to sense nutrients, the quality of the diet goes down. Skeletal muscle's ability to sense nutrients, dietary protein, reduces as we age.
Okay.
What does that mean? That means that you can overcome what we call anabolic resistance with improvements in diet and exercise. Anabolic resistance is the decrease in the efficiency of being able to turn over or being able to maintain skeletal muscle health.
Which happens as we age,
It can happen as we
or
age.
can happen.
I would also argue potentially it happens if we're sedentary.
Yeah.
If you are younger and struggling with obesity, I think that there are components to youthful muscle almost responding like aging muscle.
Yeah. So maybe it's even more so just that we're more sedentary as we age, not necessarily even that we're aging.
I think that there are components to that that are very likely true, and that this idea of aging that is so pervasive may not necessarily just be an aging phenomenon. It is the way that we've treated the health of our skeletal muscle, both nutritionally and through training, that changes everything.
Yeah.
And that if an individual goes through life and does the activity that they did when they are younger, and let's say midlife, they're too busy, they're not training as much, or in high school, they start being, that they're a lot less active, because when we were growing up, we didn't have all these tablets and
Exactly.
I mean,
we were just talking about that. Like,
we didn't grow up like
played,
this. I know.
for fun. That's what we did.
Right.
And it's just so the opposite now, and it's so sad.
And the challenge is I think that we're accelerating the aging of our skeletal muscle because we are so inactive. The human body was designed to be pushed.
Yes.
It was.
I love it when you talk about this. And I have another question on this too.
Yeah.
But like this idea that women should not engage in certain types of exercise because it's like too stressful for our bodies.
Totally disagree with that.
Explain your thoughts.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. I think that what we're seeing, and again, in the wellness space, everybody means well. And there's a lot of complexities to being human, right? Being a human, at least my husband tells me that, that human beings are complex.
Yeah.
And you'll hear in the media or even on social media that women should change the way that they're training because whether it's resistance training or metabolic conditioning is too stressful for the body. Now, I would say that that is largely untrue. And of course, there are certain cases in which that may be true, with young athletes maybe becoming amenorrheic because of the volume and the stress of their training.
Losing your period?
Yes. But the reality is 50% of Americans don't exercise.
Yeah.
Nearly 75% of Americans don't even meet the baseline criteria for physical activity.
Yeah.
That's 30 minutes a day and 2 days a week of weightlifting. Nearly 75% of us don't meet that.
Wow.
When I hear that women should cut back on their aggressive training, I think that that's a mistake.
Yeah.
And I know it's a mistake. I'm a physician that sees patients.
Right.
We don't see that in clinical practice. What we see is that most people are not effective in their training. They are going and they are doing the same thing, or they don't have a plan. They just decide to go to the gym. And listen, doing something is better than doing nothing, but having a structured plan with a goal in mind. However, when it comes to training, you have to be organized. My goal for training is I want to become stronger. If I, and I know that you've just recently embarked on a new strength training program, which I'm very excited to hear.
Yeah.
Now you've opened Pandora's box because I'm going to be checking in on you.
Okay, good. I'm ready for it.
Because I want to see you get stronger. I don't want you going to the gym to go to the gym because you're checking off a box.
Right.
I want you going there because we've chosen movements that we think are important for you. Whether it's push-ups, whether it's squats, whether it's deadlifts. I want to know that once we've chosen these exercises, that you're progressing and that you're getting stronger and that you're getting more metabolically fit.
It's amazing how quickly it happens. Like I've only been doing this for about 6 weeks and I already feel better and stronger than I did when I started. And I feel like the muscles, they're just like waiting for you.
Yes.
Like, okay, when are you gonna start using me? When are you gonna start pushing me a little bit?
Yeah.
Because something changed when I started utilizing my muscles more and not just like during workouts. Like I have more energy throughout the day. I feel like I'm sleeping better. It impacts so many things like we've already talked about. It's pretty wild.
And one thing that we didn't talk about is, skeletal muscle, healthy skeletal muscle looks like a fillet. Unhealthy skeletal muscle looks like a marbled steak.
Interesting.
And what happens is over time, if you are inactive, you get fat that infiltrates that tissue.
Wow.
Creates fibrosis, can displace mitochondria.
Wow.
And now
so fat in the muscle.
Yes.
Can grow.
It's called myostelatosis.
I did not know that.
Yes. And when you look at a cross-sectional area of, say, a thigh, you will see fat in this tissue. And that changes its ability to produce strength. It also changes its ability to produce energy. What you're talking about is you're talking about the health of your mitochondria. Just by doing some kind of activity, your skeletal muscle gets immediate benefit.
So can you get rid of that fat that's marbled into the muscle? Okay, just by utilizing it more?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing is you've always been an in-shape person. You've been active your whole life.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't have a defined program.
Not to the extent that I wanted
Right.
with strength in the last few years, but yes.
But because you did that and you set that foundation, it will always be easier for you to go back to that.
Yeah.
And also for the moms listening, it's never too late.
I love how you say, I've heard you say this before, the best time to start strength training was yesterday, the second best time is today.
And that's absolutely right.
Yeah. I think about my trainer. He's He's almost 60, and he didn't start until he was in his like early 50s, and he is jacked now. So it's amazing what kind of progress you can make even later on in life.
Yeah, and when, I think about all the things that we're trying to do in our lives to maintain energy and go to bed at this time and wake up at this time and eat these different foods, that is all critical. But if you are not addressing the health of your skeletal muscle, it doesn't really matter. And that's a big statement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just telling you earlier, like with my second child, I struggled a lot with recovery postpartum, just feeling like myself again, feeling good, losing baby weight, all of these things. And that's when you were so generous with your time and got on the phone with me and kind of broke down your protein recommendations for me. And you had some other really helpful tips too. But that was the only thing I changed at the time. I had been strength training previously, didn't start that again until very recently. So I wasn't strength training. I only changed my protein intake and kind of started balancing my meals around protein, and that alone changed everything for me.
And the reason is as we age, our protein needs actually go up.
Okay.
It's the one macronutrient that we need more of, not less of. And in the beginning of our conversation, you said, okay, well, what happens to aging muscle? And I said, well, its ability to sense nutrients goes down, but also its ability to turn over goes down. So its ability to maintain itself reduces as we age. The way to overcome that is only 2 ways. There's literally only 2 ways, which makes this so simple.
Strength training and protein intake.
That's it.
If you had to choose one, which one would you choose for people?
I say, okay, well, first of all, no one ever has to choose one.
You never have to,
But
you don't have to choose one.
It actually is strength training.
Really?
And that was one of the things that I really had to change my mind on. I always believed it's all about nutrition, and it is. I mean, you cannot build muscle without protein. However, you cannot just eat protein and build muscle.
Yeah.
I suppose you could maintain your lean tissue if you weren't, if you were low protein and then you're adding it in, but you're not gonna essentially grow in a meaningful way without the stimulus. And you need that. And it doesn't take a lot of stimulus. I worked on some of these early studies of postmenopausal women, and we had them doing 5 days a week of walking and 2 days a week of resistance training. And eating protein, they maintained their muscle. And they even put on muscle.
Wow.
It wasn't crazy.
That's not, everyone can do that.
Everyone can do that, but the caveat is put on as much muscle as you can as early as you can.
Yeah.
Women are afraid that it's going to stress their bodies out too much or they're going to get bulky. That will never happen. But what will happen is your ability to put on muscle becomes more challenging as you age.
Okay.
If you can do it when you are younger, that's amazing. If you decided that that wasn't part of your program, you can still do it, but you're going to have to be much tighter on your nutrition. And from a dietary perspective, I recommend close to 1 gram per pound ideal body weight.
Okay.
If someone is 200 pounds and their ideal body weight is 150 pounds, then I recommend 150 grams of protein.
So what does that look like for you? Like a day of eating, how do you kind of build your meals around protein? What is your protein? What kind of proteins are you eating? How much?
Well, you nailed it with the whey protein shake. And I'm going to make this really easy for the listeners so they can go, okay, I watched Bethany and Gabrielle. I know exactly what I need to eat. I know exactly how I need to train. Let's lay down what they have to eat. In the hierarchy of dietary protein, the first most important aspect is how much protein you're getting in a day. So if we're thinking about this hierarchy, the base is how much protein. Now, again, 0.7 to 1 gram is what I would consider ideal for everybody. If you are more plant-based, then you need closer to 1 gram. The more plant-based you are, the more overall protein you need.
Because they're not often complete proteins.
It's not the same. It doesn't have the same amino acid profile.
Yeah.
You need more of it. The second most important aspect is the quality of your protein. Where are you getting it? I use lean red meats. I use chicken, I use fish, I use eggs, I use Greek yogurt a lot.
So you like dairy?
I do.
You like raw dairy?
Well, you know, we don't have access to it.
Okay.
I would totally be all for it, but I mean, we live in Houston,
Hard
Texas.
to access in certain parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's somewhere there, but yeah, we eat dairy.
Yeah.
And then also shakes. So when you think about, people will say, you know, I'm a busy mom. I run a business. I'm writing my second book. There's all kinds of, I run a podcast.
So many things.
I need things that are easy. Whey protein is actually great for me and also for the kids.
Same. I give it to my kids all the time.
So that makes it super easy. And then the next thing that we have to think about is how we distribute protein. The recommendation that I have is make sure you hit at least 2 meals of between 30 and 50 grams. The first meal is the most important, and then I would argue that the last meal is the most important.
Yeah. So quality
So
breakfast,
Yep.
dinner, in the middle, you've got a little wiggle room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 1 gram of protein per ideal body weight.
Yeah.
For everybody.
And
Seems pretty
definitely,
easy.
if they do nothing else, then they have to understand that that first meal of the day, increase it to 30 grams, 30 to 50 grams. You know, I have a protein conversion chart for free so that people know what is 30 to 50 grams.
Yeah.
It would be a 4-ounce chicken or steak that would have around 28 grams of protein.
Okay. Easy.
Yeah.
I feel like your protein recommendations are so easy to
Yeah.
implement. Like, it's not extreme.
No.
It's going to make you feel better right away. Something
Balance your blood
that anyone
sugar.
can do. Yes. And so, what about strength training? Like, what is the bare minimum that everyone should be doing?
2 days a week.
Okay.
2 days a week, full body. It's not ideal. They should do more. I would say I'm happy if you do, if someone is just listening, going, okay, how do I get started? We'll say 2 days a week, full body.
Of lifting weights.
And it could be a push-pull, squat hinge.
What about body weight versus lifting weights?
They can start with body weight and then move to bands. And then after bands, I want you to move to weights.
Yeah.
And you can lift a heavy weight. I mean, the evidence would support that you could just do lighter weights and go to failure, but that takes a lot of time. I was showing you videos. My daughter's picking up a 35-pound kettlebell.
Yeah.
She doesn't
Amazing.
even think that she can't do it. If we can make iPad and cell phones and computer screens part of our daily activity, how can you tell me we cannot make physical fitness part of our life?
Right. It's all about conditioning.
You brush your
the
teeth,
habits
you go
that we
do some
implement.
push-ups. I mean,
Right.
and people would say, oh gosh, you know, that seems so extreme. But is it really?
Right.
I'm priming my children to be strong and capable.
Everything is so easy now. We have to manufacture challenges in our life
I've never
in
thought
order
about
to
that.
have the outcome that we want.
I've never thought about that.
It's so convenient.
Life is so
you know?
easy that we have to manufacture challenge.
Yeah, like you talked about, like
Yeah.
doing some push-ups after you brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Or like I'll do air squats. Like after I eat a meal, I'll like
It's a
do a
great
few air
idea.
squats just to
And-
kind of like get that glucose out of there. And
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly how you leverage skeletal muscle. 2 days a week, resistance training, full body. Every day you should be moving. Every day you should be walking. And you can do things like add a little weight vest.
Yeah.
I've been using this, it's called an ion compression vest.
okay.
It's amazing.
How many pounds is it?
It's like 6 pounds, 5
Okay.
pounds.
Great.
I wear it all day long.
Oh, that's awesome. Those little things make such a difference. I have these.
That's it.
It's called Bala, I think Bala ankle weights, and they're 2 pounds each. So it doesn't seem like much, but when I go on walks,
I need to get
it
those.
makes such a difference. They're kind of cute, and you can put some on. Like sometimes I put some on my arms too. But
Those are the things.
Yeah.
So how do we increase our non-exercise activity? Because going and training 2 days a week, that's great. Is it enough? Well, it's enough to maintain what you have. But how do we then incorporate into our life doing more?
yeah, what's the next level things?
Yeah.
Like what's ideal for you?
I think 3 to 4 days a week. For me, I do 3 to 4 days a week of resistance training.
Okay. That's what I'm starting to do.
Yes, and by choice, I tend to go heavier.
Yeah. Well, you get more out of it, right?
Not
When you-
necessarily.
No?
That was another thing I had to change.
Okay.
I believed that you had to go heavy in order to create stimulus. But the reality is you just have to go close to failure to create stimulus.
Okay.
For me, I only want to go to 12 reps. if I was going really light, that might take me 25. I also think there's something about mental focus and concentration that becomes important.
Yeah.
3 to 4 days a week of those exercises. And I actually do, so personally, I do full body because I'm working on overall strength and rehabbing some injury. But that would be a great place for people. If I could wave my magic wand and say, okay, Bethany, in 6 months, you are doing 4 days a week of resistance training that you couldn't even imagine that you are going to train other days. You will be transformed. Now,
I can imagine. I mean, I really have noticed differences in 6 weeks. So in 6 months, I'm so excited for what's ahead.
Now let's throw in high intensity interval training.
Okay. How often for that?
Yes. Metabolic conditioning. 1 day a week of, you could even take it to your max. So sprint interval training. That's what I do. And that's what...
Sprinting is intense.
I actually can't sprint. I do it on an Airdyne.
Okay.
And we go
the bike
all out.
kind of thing?
Yep. Between 10 and 30 seconds is... 30 seconds you're probably not even pushing hard enough because you're doing an all-out effort.
Yeah.
But for me, it takes a second to kind of get into gear. And you do that for 4 or 5 rounds until you can't really maintain those RPMs.
And just once a week for that?
Yeah. I mean, you
That's
do
not
it
that
for
bad.
more. No,
Yeah.
but you throw that in 1 day a week and you're going to be doing amazing. Of course, there's cardiovascular activity. Everyone is talking about zone 2 training, and yay. I don't know if anyone has time for that. There are ways in which you can improve your VO2 max or your exercise capacity by doing high intensity interval training.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this long drawn out kind of experience. But I do think the more you move, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we talked about we're meant to perform under challenge. We're women. We're not like these delicate flowers that are not capable of being challenged and strained. What do you think though about cycle syncing? Do you?
Nothing. I don't.
Okay.
I don't. The data is still too early. Mm-hmm. I think a more valuable point would be when women are perimenopause or postmenopause, there seems to be an increase in tissue injury, tendon injury, because estrogen, progesterone, they all play a role in tendon health. And I think that's...
And they decrease as they age.
And I think that's the real impact. But the cycle syncing for training, the evidence doesn't really support that yet.
Interesting. Okay.
It's just, I have to be truthful with the science. It's just not there.
Yeah.
I mean, there is emerging evidence that potentially that these hormones, and it would make sense, impact, but do we need to change our diet and our training with our cycles? I think it further complicates things.
Yeah. And I think everyone can kind of tap into their own intuition with that too. If there are days that you are just really not feeling it for one day or another, you can kind of make adaptations based on that. But I also think it can be overcomplicated for some people to where you're trying to think, okay, the phase and the diet and the workout, how do I tailor everything perfectly? It shouldn't be that. It can be kind of distracting, I would imagine, if you're really trying to
It's a distraction, and it's a layer of complexity that I think is unnecessary.
Yeah. What do you think about fasting for women?
There's nothing magic about fasting.
Okay, tell me more. Because I'm a fan of fasting, but I want to hear your perspective.
There is, so I think the first thing is, how do we define a fast? Mm-hmm. Are we talking about an 8 to 9 hour restricted feeding window? I do that.
Yeah, and I think most people would consider that a form of fasting.
But in my mind, fasting is 3 days without food, 24 hour,
extended.
48 hour. That's kind of when I think about fasting.
Yeah.
But an 8 to 9 hour feeding window is perfectly acceptable, and it's a great way to manage calories.
Yeah. And I've heard too that your growth hormone increases when you break a fast. If you're practicing a shortened feeding window regularly, that once you break the fast, your growth hormone can increase. Is there any truth to that? And then you have a higher propensity to build muscle.
I would say no.
Fast.
And none of that is meaningful, right?
Okay.
That if that were true, then would that increase in that moment be meaningful? And it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
The way to build muscle is to train and to feed.
Yeah.
Fasting will not help someone build muscle. Now, I will say the one aspect that I find very interesting is this training with low muscle glycogen. That might impact muscle by causing it to release more myokines.
What does that mean?
Means when you contract skeletal muscle as an organ system, it releases these peptide molecules called myokines that are unique to skeletal muscle. And when you are training, say, in a fasted, low carbohydrate way, meaning you've depleted your muscle glycogen,
Okay.
then your muscle responds differently. And you might burn more fat, you might have a different brain effect. It releases more of these molecules.
Interesting.
I think it's hard to say exactly what that outcome is, but that would be something where I think it's very interesting to think about.
And that's training in a low carbohydrate state
Yeah.
or in a fasted state?
Well, in order to get to that low carb state, it's I think
You have to
it would,
burn them up by...
Yeah, I think it would be a
not eating.
combination of a low glycogen state.
Okay.
So not necessarily a low carbohydrate diet, but I could put my body into a low glycogen state in a day.
Yeah. So if you're training in the morning after sleeping maybe and kind of
Maybe, I see what you're saying. So maybe 2 days of a low, depending on how high
Okay.
your carbohydrate is in your diet, maybe 2 days of a low carb diet and then you're training in the morning.
Yeah.
That potentially would be a low glycogen state. That could have impact.
Okay.
But here is where fasting, so let's kind of lay this out. An 8 to 9 hour feeding window is perfectly acceptable, and that would be intermittent feeding. Would you call it intermittent feeding or intermittent fasting, I suppose?
Either one.
But if someone is older, then I don't think that they should push their fast earlier in the day. So their first meal should not be, if you are a perimenopausal woman or not perimenopausal, let's say postmenopausal woman, if you are 50, you don't have hormones, you're not on hormone replacement, then I don't think that you should fast all day. And then because now you haven't stimulated muscle. Remember, the overall goal is how do we incorporate muscle health?
Yeah. Keeping the muscle, building muscle.
Right. So fasting, if someone is listening to this and they're like, well, I want to fast, then keep your feeding windows earlier.
And then end them earlier in the day.
So eat, starting at 8 and then end earlier.
Yeah.
If someone is trying to get pregnant, I do not recommend fasting in the morning.
Yeah.
I have found that seems to, and this is just anecdotal, but it seems to increase cortisol a little bit. It just doesn't seem like it is a good strategy.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And what do you do?
Just in case for number 4.
Yeah, right.
Just in case for number 4. Just throwing it out
Way
there.
off in the distance, maybe. But what is I've heard you say you don't eat until a little bit later. Are you still doing that, or?
For me, I am very structured, so I have my meals typically very structured. I prep for the whole week. We prep a lot of lean steak, and then a couple chicken dishes. So we have steak and chicken and vegetables, and we have rice and potato. And
That's like exactly how we eat.
Yeah, and it's all prepped.
Yeah, we'll do crock pots in the morning.
Perfect.
With pot roast and carrots and potatoes and onion. It's like, it takes 5 minutes in the morning to prepare, and then you have an already made meal later that day. Or we'll do some kind of protein, steak, chicken, something I'll do like a big tray of roasted vegetables and potatoes.
And it's very difficult to overeat protein.
It is.
Your body has this natural appetite towards it, and so it will feed until it gets enough.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why people think with these highly palatable foods that they get obese or get overweight, is because they're trying to feed for this protein.
Yeah, your body wants the protein, and if you're not giving your body the protein, it will keep eating.
Yes.
It will keep searching for that until it has it, and it's so easy to overeat on carbs and fats. But so would you recommend in a meal then, like, filling up on protein first?
I do.
Before you really move on to these other food groups?
I do. The other thing is we should mention carbs. How do we eat carbs? Because I don't think carbs are bad. And the idea is, what's your carbohydrate tolerance?
Yeah.
The current recommendation is 130 grams a day The average American eats 300. The question is
Wow.
The question is, how do we dose our carbs? And if you are inactive, if you are sedentary at the moment, then your meal should not have more than 50 grams of carbs per meal.
Okay.
You could do a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates. For example, the people that like carbs for breakfast, you can have 30 grams of carbs, but make sure that you're getting 30 to 50 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So your meal should not exceed 50 grams of carbs per meal. Otherwise, you'll get this bump in insulin.
Yeah. What about eating and working out and the timing with that? How do you do
Great
that?
question.
How often after a workout do you need protein? Because I think the traditional way of thinking is like you need it right away.
Yeah.
And that's what my trainer would tell me, but I want to know what you think about that.
The evidence supports that if you are young and healthy, it doesn't matter when you're actually getting your carbs or your proteins in.
Wow, there's no rush.
It's in the 24-hour.
You don't have to race back home to make a protein shake.
Where's Bethany? She left the farm. She ran to get her protein shake. But if you are older or if you have a lower protein diet, then it matters.
Okay. Why is that?
Think about it, because you've done resistance training. Exercise allows your body to respond like younger muscle. Older muscle responds like younger muscle when you train it, meaning it becomes sensitive to nutrients. Because that's the whole thing, is what are the blind spots that we're missing and that we have to account for? And one of the blind spots is understanding that our aging muscle is not the same as young muscle, but it can respond like young muscle. What we do is, if you are, let's just pick an age, I don't know, 50. If you are 50 and you want to maintain the health of your tissue, for you, after you are done doing resistance training, getting in that protein, let's say, I'll pick this number, 90 minutes. And that's probably maybe pushing it a little bit, because you have now worked out and now you have blood flow. You want to provide nutrients in that blood to get to that muscle. If you are struggling with maybe a chronic illness that maybe is creating inflammation, one could potentially take advantage of nutrient timing. If someone is older, then this would be a way to take advantage of nutrient timing. So.
Okay, interesting. We haven't talked about skin yet.
Great.
How does muscle...
It is not the largest organ.
It's not the largest organ. We're going to stop saying that. We've said that in the past. We're not going to say it anymore.
Never again.
But how does muscle help your skin, or does it? Does it have an effect on the skin?
I've seen one study that looked at those that did resistance training seemed to have tighter skin.
That's what I would think. Tighter
I
skin.
don't know if that's true,
yeah. And like more circulation.
Definitely more circulation. So definitely more circulation. The way that we move blood around is through activity. Obviously through the heart pumping, but the way in which we're circulating and improving vasculature is through training.
And more circulation is great for skin health.
Yeah, so is pregnancy apparently.
Yes, the end of pregnancy. I love that. Those last couple of months, I always have like the best skin ever. And you mentioned pregnancy. I know people are probably going to wonder, what about during pregnancy, like protein intake, strength training? What should women be doing?
Wonderful. I trained throughout my whole pregnancy. You know, I think it's really important that we say, okay, what do we know and what do we think, and then what is my opinion?
Yeah.
I looked into this literature, as you can imagine, ad nauseum, because I trained pretty intensely and I wanted to keep training. The general recommendation is to not stop what you're doing.
Yeah.
This would
I
not
feel like
be...
people say that, like, if you're already doing something, great, but don't start anything new, which I always kind of wondered about too. Like, are we really not capable of that?
I mean, listen, we are making a human. We could probably figure out how to do a kettlebell squat.
Right.
Or raise a chicken or something.
Right.
I didn't even know that they make noise like that. But the reality is, the healthier and more fit you are, the healthier your offspring will be. Mm-hmm. There's this idea of, we know that when we train, it changes gene expression. It changes gene expression for us and probably for our offspring.
Wow. That's fascinating. So like epigenetics already in the works.
Yeah.
When
it's probably the best advice that I would give someone is to train while you are pregnant. And it wasn't easy for me, by the way. You have to be really committed.
Yeah.
I had hyperemesis gravidum.
Oh, so you were sick, like the whole time?
For 10 months.
Oh my gosh.
For those that don't know what that is, it is where you vomit 9 to 12 times easily a day.
Ugh.
It was terrible.
How did you do it?
I brought a barf bag with me, and I would do a set, and then I would throw up. Or sometimes I would do one exercise and then throw up.
Oh my gosh.
It was terrible. But
that's dedication.
I mean, I was going to be sick either way.
Right.
I might as well work out. It's, you know. So
I don't think a lot of women would have expressed that in this, like, would have made that same choice. That's amazing.
I trained throughout both pregnancies, and I swear, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but both of my children are very physically fit and capable, and they're little.
I mean, I saw videos of your kids like lifting like heavy weights.
It's crazy.
At their ages, it's pretty amazing.
And I would say that the initial part of pregnancy, you're going to be very tired, and you should absolutely honor that. But after that, I would say you have to maintain a fitness level. It's your responsibility, and it's your responsibility to your children. And then protein recommendations for, they don't have a ton of information out there. They'll recommend 90 to 100 grams. Is that enough? I mean, it's probably enough, but is it optimal? Maybe not.
Yeah. I always felt the worst when I didn't have protein. Like if I had a only carb meal, that made me feel nauseous and gross while I was pregnant, versus like protein really seemed to satiate me and calm down any nausea I was feeling.
I had meat aversion when I was pregnant. Ugh. It's not funny.
That's awful. It's like a sick joke.
I was like, this is a joke. This is terrible. But what I did do is I used a lot of shakes.
Shakes are delicious. They're so convenient. It's a great way to get, I love whey protein. What about other forms of protein that we see in shakes? Like if we're out at the juice bar or something, I see a lot of hemp protein, pea protein. What are your thoughts on those alternative, like plant-based proteins?
I mean, you can use them. They're you know, I would say from a protein perspective, they've now made them so they have the same amino acid profile typically. They've, you know, added amino acids to them. The other thing that we have to consider is we've been using whey protein forever. Pea protein is kind of a new invention. I'm sure that there are phytonutrients in there, and to the extent and to the degree at which we should be consuming that, I can't say. Yeah,
probably takes a lot of manufacturing to take like that food and turn it into a protein
But
source.
Also, what else is in it? I mean, now we're highly concentrating this, you know, pea that has some estrogen-like activity. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah, and soy, kind of similar, right, in terms of the estrogenic effects.
So what I would do is, I think that they have a new kind of fermented plant-based protein. That might be a better choice.
Yeah, but your preferred source overall is animal-based foods.
100%.
Yeah, more bioavailable.
100%.
More nutrients.
I don't think plant protein is the way to go.
Yeah.
I think eat your plants for fiber and other vitamins and minerals, but not for protein.
Yeah. What do you think about organ meats?
They're great for you.
Yeah.
But I'm not eating raw liver.
I made our shakes without raw liver today, so you're good on that.
But I do think, I mean, organ meats are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and not necessarily high in protein content, right? Except for maybe like the heart, because that's a muscle. Right. But in terms of nutrient profile, there's nothing.
And they do have protein. They do have protein.
Do they?
But
okay.
I actually looked up. I couldn't find the data on it because I was curious about liver.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if it had the same amino acid profile, and from what I found, it was pretty similar. And I was surprised.
To like
I was surprised.
red meat? Or
yeah, I was surprised.
Interesting. I haven't ever thought of it as like, I think of it as a multivitamin when I take it. So I never think of it as like, oh, I'm getting protein out of this. Probably because I don't eat a lot of it either when I eat it, because it does taste so bad.
Totally agree.
But great.
It's true.
Great for nutrients. Let's talk about kids, family stuff.
Great.
You are a busy woman. You travel. How do you how do you do it all? How do you?
I have no idea. What day is it? I can't even find my socks.
I'm so impressed by just like the fact that you brought your daughter on this trip. You know, I think that's amazing that you're giving her the chance to experience what you do and be a part of that. I think that's missing, and it's easy to just, you know, avoid that and kind of segment and separate things in our lives. But I love that you brought her here with you and that she's getting to like see what you do. So how do you kind of like bring her into your life?
Yeah.
And then how do you stay healthy while traveling also?
Well, for the moms out there, it's not easy. It's not easy to put forth effort to make impact. And it's not supposed to be. It's
like that idea of like choosing your hard, right? Because it's like, it's hard. It's harder to, you know, figure out the right balance and incorporate your kids into your work and all of that. But it's also, on the flip side, it would be hard if you didn't do that to later in life not have a close relationship with your child.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, they're integral into everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, it seems like it.
As opposed to, like you said, segment it. We work out together. We eat together.
And I'd imagine they eat the same foods you eat.
Yeah, but they're also kids, so you know, they're exposed to junk food too from their friends. And you know, I try also not to make it a way that kind of creates a negative experience for her. She knows what's healthy and what's not.
Yep.
And I give her the opportunity to self-regulate. What's interesting is my son, who's 3, he doesn't really like any of that stuff.
Wow.
He's really into healthy food, and that's what he likes.
Yeah, I think the earlier you start them, it's amazing. Like my kids were eating like liver was one of their first foods.
That was our
disgusting.
First food.
Like, but they loved it.
I know, you're just in the back like, oh my God. Yes. Liver was our first food too.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. So if you give them that stuff early on, it's a lot easier versus trying to incorporate that later on. It can be more challenging if kids are used to eating a certain way.
And we don't have foods that are not good in the house.
Yeah.
We just don't. And we do a lot of talking, you know, being outside. What are you grateful for?
Yeah.
And I think that
the emotional component is not something to be ignored when it comes to health and wellness too.
And then I think that you just build strong families, because strong families are the future.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to do kind of some rapid fire stuff with you. Do you drink alcohol?
No.
Why not?
It's disgusting.
You hated it. You just hate the taste?
Yeah.
You've always hated the taste. One of those people. Okay. What do you think about alcohol from a health perspective? Is there a place for alcohol in a healthy lifestyle?
Is this yes or no?
Yeah.
No.
What do you think about creatine?
Great. Great for
creatine?
women, great for the brain.
Yeah.
Great for older populations. The current recommendation is 5 grams. You could go higher. And I've actually calculated how much food you would have to eat to get creatine in your diet. It would be nearly impossible to, I think in a pound of red meat, it's like 2 grams.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we're not getting that much of it.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I know growing up, it was always, I thought of it as something like bodybuilders used. And then more recently, I've learned about the brain benefits and just how it's really an important nutrient for everyone.
That actually goes to how do we create a diet, though, that has all these nutrients? The only place that you get creatine is from animal products.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But 5 grams for muscle and 10 or higher for brain.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Budget aside, what is your biggest health or wellness splurge that you're loving right now?
I don't know.
Could be like a treatment that you've been getting, or like a, I don't know if you're into any like biohacking.
I love a good cold plunge.
Yeah,
I'm
do you guys have a cold plunge? Okay.
I'm waiting for my new cold plunge.
Which one did you get?
So I got, so I love the plunge.
That's the one that we have.
Okay, so they just came out with a new plunge.
Okay, so how long do you cold plunge? How often?
Oh, at least 3 days a week.
Nice.
At least 3 days a week.
How long do you do it for?
Well, I'm married to a former SEAL. Have you ever heard of Winter Hell Week?
No.
I never have ever heard the end of it. So it's basically they're out there in 50-degree water for days, for 4 days. So needless to say, when I do my 5 minutes, I might do 3 to 5 minutes.
That's a lot. That's impressive.
Yeah.
What is your biggest guilty pleasure when it comes to food? Or do you have one?
I don't have one. You know what? I guess you could say caffeine.
Okay. How many cups of coffee do you do?
3.
Do you ever have it late into the day?
Yes, ma'am.
And you sleep fine.
Probably not, but I have 2 little children and 3 businesses. Probably not.
I get that. What are your biggest secrets for healthy glowing skin?
Collagen.
Yeah.
And great topical products that have vitamin C and koji. I think it's called koji acid. Is that right? I would say that that's it.
Yeah.
Exfoliate.
Yeah.
Sunscreen. A good derm.
Yeah. Your skin's beautiful.
Thank you.
And so collagen.
Yes.
Tell our listeners about the benefits of collagen for skin health.
So collagen is amazing. I think it's really underrated. And we'll first say that collagen is an incomplete protein. So please do not count this. Do not
for your
count
overall
this.
dietary needs. Yeah.
But for hair, skin, and nails, I think it's amazing. So for me, I might do 18 grams a day. And I think that there's probably benefit to going above that.
Yeah.
And I use it every day. I was telling you about this strong coffee. Mm-hmm. And how can we get collagen in our daily life? And I think coffee is amazing to do it. I also think for skin, polyphenols are important. Things like adding in maquia berry or some kind of polyphenol, whether it's berries or whatever you're doing. I think that can be,
Yeah.
Also some good evidence for hyaluronic acid, topical and internal. And then really a good diet. I think a good whole foods diet that has plenty of protein. So in order to have good skin, you do need protein.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Botox?
Sign me up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So when it comes to like muscles and the idea that we want to utilize the muscles to build strong, healthy tissue, and like with Botox having kind of a paralyzing effect on the muscles, do you think that there are concerns with that long-term?
I don't, because the muscles that we're talking about are facial muscles versus muscles that you would be using for locomotion. I think that Botox has been around for a long time, and I don't think it's a systemic toxin. And I don't think that there's long-term negative effects at all.
What about like muscle atrophy in the face?
I just don't see it because you use your muscle all the time. And also depending on how they do it. For example, what is the outcome of having a paralyzed forehead? Probably nothing, because the muscle's also so small. That facial muscles aren't necessarily muscles that you would build and notice that you would build it. So
small that maybe we're not, even if they were kind of like wasting away, it wouldn't be something that that would be like noticeable.
And I don't necessarily think that they would waste away. I mean, I think it's a very interesting question, but they're just such small muscles in the not just diameter, but just the structure of it.
Yeah, I know. I wonder about that just because of like the importance of movement for creating healthy tissue, and like what is that doing when we're not allowing that movement, over an extended period of time?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, but I suppose I haven't ever really thought about that, but again, the muscles of the face are so small, and I don't know. And I think that people have been using Botox for so long, and we've never seen any negative outcomes.
I feel like celebrities have been using it forever. But then they're also doing so many other things, right? That most people don't even like have access to.
Yep.
And I wonder about the general population, and I think with people that are less experienced now administering it on a much wider scale. Like I wonder if there will be more implications down the road with some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I also think it just depends on what someone's beliefs are. You can age beautifully without Botox.
Yeah, it's not a morality issue by any means.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a personal choice, for sure. It's not something that anyone should feel like shame or guilt over. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. Yeah. What helps you feel the most grounded in life?
My family.
Sweet. Yeah. It seems like you guys are very close and like that you really prioritize togetherness and like creating a solid home dynamic.
Yeah, and you know, also friends. I think relationships are everything.
I think that's so easy to forget about that as
Not for me.
I love that.
For me. Yeah.
No, but I've gone through periods where I've been so focused on like my family and my work.
Yeah.
And then the friendships kind of are the first thing to fall by the wayside. And I've been working on that a lot in the last few years of really like making that a priority because it is important.
Yeah, I think that I think relationships are everything.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have your book here, Forever Strong, New York Times bestseller. Tell us, like, people can buy this. Tell us where people can find your book, where people can find you and connect with you.
So they can go to my website, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I have a podcast, an Instagram, a free newsletter. I provide a ton of content. YouTube, we have a clinical practice. You name it, we do it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we probably went over time, but
That's okay.
I appreciate your time, and I'm sure our kids are not even like wondering where we are right now because they're
not
probably
interested.
having so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
coming.
I really appreciate everything that you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much. Likewise, you're such a wealth of knowledge, and I think our listeners will get so much value from this conversation. So thank you so much.